So I recently started reading the book Atlas Shrugged by Rand for a book club that I'm in a chat group that's part of a larger podcast that I enjoy. It's strangely enough, it's hosted by an atheist who I have much more in common with than I do with a lot of Christians out there, and also by a newly converted Christian who I really enjoy, but also find myself at times going, okay, we'd have some interesting conversations about that. So, Atlas Shrugged is a kind of a seminal work by Ayn Rand, and she admittedly had an agenda when she wrote it. And there again, as I say in so many of my commentaries and videos, everyone has an agenda, and I don't have a problem with that. But one of the things that I've noticed about her work here is that while some people complain that her characters are two-dimensional, I believe that's intentional. And I say that because if you observe society, we have a two-dimensional view of the people that we interact with on a daily basis. We don't really get into any depth of dimension on anyone outside of people in our own homes, in our own family subsets. So your neighbor across the street or across the lawn or across the backyard fence or whatever the case might be is really just two-dimensional. You know whether or not you like that person or have an affinity for that person, but you don't really know anything of depth about that person. So that person is really just two-dimensional. And so I think that one of the really powerful things about Anne's characters, and I know I keep saying her name wrong, and I'm just going to go with Ayn Rand, or Ayn. I see that's the thing. I'm no good with that name. But one of the things about her characters is she's looking at them as an observer. Now, there are times where when she writes about these characters, she's writing about their thought process, but she's still writing about their thought process as an observer, not as a director, or as a deific being, if you will, which is actually really in line with Anne's philosophy. She was an objectivist. Her philosophical leanings as an atheist were objectivism. So she's not really going to control the characters as much as she is going to extol us to understand the characters as observers. And the other thing that she does is that she actually predicts in this book so much of what's happening today. And everybody, we talk about this with books like 1984, Brave New World. We talk about it with Animal Farm. Recently read the short story Harrison Bergeron. Everybody, oh look, so ahead of their time, so ahead of their time. And the reason that a lot of this was ahead of their time is that authors and philosophers are looking down the road. They're thinking outside of themselves. They're thinking outside of the perspective of just me, just right now, and how is this affecting my immediacy. What they're thinking about is, how is this going to affect people beyond me? And that's why I like the two-dimensional, if you will, if that's really how you feel about the characters in Atlas Shrugged. That's why I like the two-dimensional nature of this, is because they are thinking about the right now. And then a character will come in and say, well, but years ago, if someone had done this, we would have been able to fight what's coming and what's going to be in the future. And that's philosophical. And I really enjoy that. And so one of the things that I'm going to do is, as I come across passages or sections of this book, I'm going to be sharing these things with little to no commentary. And so from this point forward, when I do this, I'll set up some backstory, very, very little. I want people to read this book. I would love for my Christian friends especially to step outside of the realm of their comfort zone and delve into the works of great atheist philosophers. Um, Whether we agree with them or not, there's something to be learned from them. We see that in the works of Paul. Paul refers to philosophers and poets that were not Christian or even Jewish. So the section that I'm going to be reading from today is from part 2 of the book Atlas Shrugged, and it takes place in a wedding after party. It's some of the protagonists slash antagonists, and it's really hard to know who's who at times, which is another just phenomenal look at what's going on with this book. Because we don't always know in the real world who's a protagonist and who's an antagonist at times. So, I mean, at times I look at President Trump and I'm like protagonist, and then other times I'm like antagonist, you know. So it's taking place in a wedding party, and one of the protagonists slash antagonist is a Signor d'Anconia, and he is being questioned. He's kind of viewed as a playboy, and he's being questioned about his views on what's going to happen to society. And he's a massively wealthy man. His family was incredibly wealthy. They owned a copper mining and production company. They're from Spain. He then immigrated to South America. And so we're going to take off here where Francisco d'Anconia is at the party, and he's interacted with some of the other protagonists slash antagonists of the story. And here's where it goes. And I want you to pay very close attention to what is said here and think about this as it relates to the current context of society. Francisco did not seem to have noticed him. Reardon waited, fighting a desire to approach. Not after the kind of conversation we had, he thought. What for? What would I say to him? And then, with the same smiling, light-hearted feeling, the feeling of being certain that it was right, he found himself walking across the ballroom toward the group that surrounded Francisco d'Anconia. He wondered, looking at them, why these people were drawn to Francisco, why they chose to hold him imprisoned in a clinging circle, when their resentment of him was obvious under their smiles. Their faces had the hint of a look peculiar, not to fear, but to cowardice, a look of guilty anger. Francisco stood, cornered against the side edge of a marble stairway, half leaning, half sitting on the steps. The informality of his posture, combined with the strict formality of his clothes, gave him an air of superlative elegance. His was the only face that had the carefree look and the brilliant smile proper to the enjoyment of a party. But his eyes seemed intentionally expressionless, holding no trace of gaiety, showing like a warning signal nothing but the activity of a heightened perceptiveness. Standing unnoticed on the edge of the group, Reardon heard a woman who had large diamond earrings and a flabby, nervous face ask tensely, "Signor d'Anconia, what do you think is going to happen to the world?" "Just exactly what it deserves." "Oh, how cruel." "Don't you believe in the operation of the moral law, madam?" Francisco asked gravely. "I do." Reardon heard Bertram Scudder, outside the group, say to a girl who made some sound of indignation, "Don't let him disturb you. You know, money is the root of all evil, and he's a typical product of money." Reardon did not think that Francisco could have heard it, but he saw Francisco turning to them with a gravely courteous smile. "So you think that money is the root of all evil?" said Francisco d'Anconia. "Have you ever asked what is the root of money? Money is a tool of exchange, which can exist unless there are goods produced and men able to produce them. Money is the material shape of the principle that men who wish to deal with one another must deal by trade and give value for value. Money is not the tool of the moochers who claim your product by tears, or of the looters who take it from you by force. Money is made possible only by the men who produce it. Is this what you consider evil? When you accept money in payment for your effort, do you so only on the conviction that you will exchange it for the product of the efforts of others? It is not the moochers or the looters who give value to money. Not an ocean of tears, nor all the guns in the world can transform those pieces of paper in your wallet into the bread you will need to survive tomorrow. Those pieces of paper, which should have been gold, are a token of honor, your claim upon the energy of the men who produce. Your wallet is your statement of hope that somewhere in the world around you there are men who will not default on that moral principle, which is the root of money. Is this what you consider evil? Have you ever looked for the root of production? Take a look at an electric generator and dare tell yourself that it was created by the muscular effort of unthinking brutes. Try to grow a seed of wheat without the knowledge left to you by men who had discovered it for the first time. Try to obtain your food by means of nothing but physical motions, and you'll learn that man's mind is the root of all the goods produced and of all the wealth that has ever existed on earth. But you say that money is made by the strong at the expense of the weak? What strength do you mean? It is not the strength of guns or muscles. Wealth is the product of man's capacity to think. Then, is money made by the man who invents a motor at the expense of those who do not invent it? Is money made by the intelligent at the expense of the fools? By the able at the expense of the incompetent? By the ambitious at the expense of the lazy? Money is made before it can be looted or mooched, made by the effort of every honest man, each to the extent of his ability. An honest man is one who knows that he can't consume more than he has produced. To trade by means of money is the code of men and goodwill. To trade by means of money is the code of the men of goodwill. Money rests on the axiom that every man is the owner of his mind and his effort. Money allows no power to prescribe the value of your effort except the voluntary choice of the man who is willing to trade you his effort in return. Money permits you to obtain for your goods and your labor that which you are worth to the men who buy them, but no more. Money permits no deals except those to mutual benefit by the unforced judgment of the traders. Money demands of you the recognition that men must work for their own benefit, not for their own injury, for their gain, not their loss. The recognition that there are no beasts of burden born to carry the weight of your misery, that you must offer them values, not wounds, that the common bond among men is not the exchange of suffering, but the exchange of goods. Money demands that you sell not your weakness to men's stupidity, but your talent to their reason. It demands that you buy not the shoddiest they offer, but the best that your money can find. And when men live by trade with reason, not force, as their final arbiter, it is the best product that wins, the best performance. The man of best judgment and highest ability and the degree of a man's productiveness is the degree of his reward. This is the code of existence, whose tool and symbol is money. Is this what you consider evil? But money is only a tool. It will take you wherever you wish, but it will not replace you as the driver. It will give you the means for the satisfaction of your desires, but it will not provide you with desires. Money is the scourge of the men who attempt to reverse the law of causality, the men who seek to replace the mind by seizing the products of the mind. Money will not purchase happiness for the man who has no concept of what he wants. Money will not give him a code of values if he's evaded the knowledge of what to value, and it will not provide him with purpose if he's evaded the choke of what to seek. Money will not buy intelligence for the fool, or admiration for the coward, or respect for the incompetent. The man who attempts to purchase the brains of his superiors to serve him, with his money replacing his judgment, ends up by becoming the victim of his inferiors. The men of intelligence desert him, but the cheats and the frauds come flocking to him, drawn by a law which he has not discovered. that no man may be smaller than his money. Is this a reason why you call it evil? Only the man who does not need it is fit to inherit wealth. The man who would make his own fortune no matter where he started. If an heir is equal to his money, it serves him. If not, it destroys him. But you look on and you cry that money corrupted him. Did it? Or did he corrupt his money? Do not envy a worthless heir. His wealth is not yours, and you would have done no better with it. Do not think that it should have been distributed among you, loading the world with 50 parasites instead of one. Would not bring back the dead virtue which was the fortune. Money is a living power that dies without its root. Money will not serve the mind that cannot match it. Is this the reason why you call it evil? Money is your means of survival. The verdict you pronounce upon the source of your livelihood is the verdict you pronounce upon your life. If the source is corrupt, you have damned your own existence. Did you get your money by fraud? By pandering to men's vices or men's stupidity? By catering to fools in the hope of getting more than your ability deserves? By lowering your standards? By doing work you despise for purchasers you scorn? If so, then your money will not give you a moment's or a penny's worth of joy. Then all the things you buy will become not a tribute to you, but a reproach, not an achievement, but a reminder of shame. Then you'll scream that money is evil. Evil because it would not pinch it for your self-respect. Evil because it would not let you enjoy your depravity. Is this the root of your hatred of money? Money will always remain an effect and refuse to replace you as the cause. Money is the product of virtue, but it will not give you virtue, and it will not redeem your vices. Money will not give you the unearned, neither in matter nor in spirit. Is this the root of your hatred of money? Or did you say it's the love of money that's the root of all evil? To love a thing is to know and love its nature. To love money is to know and love the fact that money is the creation of the best power within you, and your passkey to trade your effort for the effort of the best among men. It's the person who would sell his soul for a nickel who is the loudest in proclaiming his hatred of money, and he has good reason to hate it. The lovers of money are willing to work for it. They know they are able to deserve it. Let me give you a tip on a clue to men's characters. The man who damns money has obtained it dishonorably. The man who respects it, has earned it. Run from your life for the man who tells you that money is evil. The sentence is the leper's bell of an approaching looter. So long as men live together on earth and need means to deal with one another, their only substitute, if they abandon money, is the muzzle of a gun. But money demands of you the highest virtues, if you wish to make it or keep it. Men who have no courage, pride, or self-esteem, men who have no moral sense of their right to their money, are not willing to defend it as they defended their life. Men who apologize for being rich will not remain rich for long. They are the natural bait for the swarms of looters that stay under rocks for centuries but come crawling out at the first smell of a man who begs to be forgiven for the guilt of owning wealth. They will hasten to relieve him of the guilt and of his life as he deserves. Then you will see the rise of the men of the double standard, the men who live by force, yet count on those who live by trade to create the value of their looted money, the men who are the hitchhikers of virtue. In a moral society, these are the criminals, and the statutes are written to protect you against them. But when a society establishes criminals by right and looters by law, men who use force to seize the wealth of disarmed victims, and money becomes its creator's avenger. Such looters believe it's safe to rob defenseless men once they passed a law to disarm them. But their loot becomes a magnet for other looters who get it from them as they got it. Then the race goes, not to the ablest at production, but to those most ruthless at brutality. When force is the standard, the murderer wins over the pickpocket. And when that society vanishes in a spread of ruins and slaughter. And then that society vanishes in a spread of ruins and slaughter. Do you wish to know whether that day is coming? Watch money. Money is the barometer of a society's virtue. When you see that trading is done not by consent but by compulsion, when you see that in order to produce you need to obtain permission from men who produce nothing, when you see that money is flowing to those who deal not in goods but in favors, when you see that men get richer by graft and by pull than by work, and your laws don't protect you against them but protect them against you, when you see corruption being rewarded and honesty becoming a self-sacrifice, you may know that your society is doomed. Money is so noble a medium that it does not compete with guns and it does not make terms with brutality. It will not permit a country to survive as half property, half loot. Whenever destroyers appear among men, they start by destroying money, for money is men's protection and the base of a moral existence. Destroyers seize gold and leave to its owners a counterfeit pile of paper. This kills all objective standards and delivers men into the arbitrary power of an arbitrary setter of values. Gold was an objective value, an equivalent of wealth produced. Paper is a mortgage on wealth that does not exist, backed by a gun aimed at those who are expected to produce it. Paper is a check drawn by legal looters upon an account which is not theirs, upon the virtue of the victims. Watch for the day when it bounces marked, account overdrawn. When you have made evil the means of survival, do not expect men to remain good. Do not expect them to stay moral and lose their lives for the purpose of becoming the fodder of the immoral. Do not expect them to produce when production is punished and looting rewarded. Do not ask, who is destroying the world? You are. You stand in the midst of the greatest achievements of the greatest productive civilization, and you wonder why it's crumbling around you while you're damning its lifeblood, money. You look upon money as the savages did before you, and you wonder why the jungle is creeping back to the edge of your cities. Throughout men's history, money was always seized by looters of one brand or another, whose names changed, but whose method remained the same: to seize wealth by force, and to keep the producers bound, demeaned, defamed, deprived of honor. That phrase about the evil of money, which you mouth with such righteous recklessness, comes from a time when wealth was produced by the labor of slaves who repeated the motions once discovered by somebody's mind and left unimproved for centuries. So long as production was ruled by force and wealth was obtained by conquest, there was little to conquer. Yet through all the centuries of stagnation and starvation, men exalted the looters as aristocrats of the sword, as aristocrats of birth, as aristocrats of the bureau, and despised the producers as slaves, as traders, as shopkeepers, as industrialists. To the glory of mankind, there was, for the first and only time in history, a country of money, and I have no higher, more reverent tribute to pay to America for this means. A country of reason, justice, freedom, production, achievement. For the first time, man's mind and money were set free, and there were no fortunes by conquest, but only fortunes by work. And instead of swordsmen and slaves, there appeared the real maker of wealth, the greatest worker, the highest type of human being, the self-made man, the American industrialist. If you ask me to name the proudest distinction of Americans, I would choose, because it contains all the others, the fact that they were the people who created the phrase, to make money. No other language or nation had ever used these words. Before, men had always thought of wealth as a static quantity to be seized, begged, inherited, shared, looted, or obtained as a favor. Americans were the first to understand that wealth has to be created. The words, to make money, hold the essence of human morality. Yet these were the words for which Americans were denounced by the rotted cultures of the looters' continents. Now the looter's credo has brought you to regard your proudest achievements as the hallmark of shame, your prosperity as guilt, your greatest men, the industrialists, as blackguards. and your magnificent factories as a product and property of muscular labor, the labor of whip-driven slaves like the pyramids of Egypt. The rodder who simpers that he sees no difference between the power of the dollar and the power of the whip ought to learn the difference on his own hide, as I think he will. Until and unless you discover that money is the root of all good, you ask for your own destruction. When money ceases to be the tool by which men deal with one another, then men become the tools of men. Blood, whips, and guns, or dollars. Take your choice. There is no other, and your time is running out. Francisco had not glanced at Reardon once while speaking, but the moment he finished, his eyes went straight to Reardon's face. Reardon stood motionless, seeing nothing but Francisco d'Anconia across the moving figures and angry voices between them. There were people who had listened but now hurried away, and people who said, "It's horrible, it's not true, how vicious and selfish," saying it loudly and guardedly at once, as if wishing that their neighbors would hear them, but hoping that Francisco would not. "Senor d'Anconia," declared the woman with the earrings, "I don't agree with you." "If you can refute a single sentence I uttered, madam, I shall hear it gratefully." "Oh, I can't answer you. I don't have any answers. My mind doesn't work that way. But I don't feel that you're right, so I know that you're wrong." "How do you know it?" "I feel it. I don't go by my head, but by my heart. You might be good at logic, but you're heartless. I feel it. Hear that? I feel it. Madam, when we'll see men dying of starvation around us, your heart won't be of any earthly use to save them. And I'm heartless enough to say that when you'll scream, 'But I didn't know it,' you will not be forgiven." The woman turned away, a shudder running through her, the flesh of her cheeks, and through the angry tremor of her voice. Well, it's certainly a funny way to talk at a party. As always, thanks for watching the video. Thanks for being open-minded. Thanks for listening. I would ask that over here in the corner, somewhere on your screen, you hit the subscribe button. It's important, not for me, but because mainstream media, legacy media, isn't going to get the word out. They're not going to let people who don't toe the established line speak. So for the sake of liberty and for the sake of the defense of this nation, small little independent voices like mine need to be heard, especially the interviews. It's got very little to do with my commentary and a lot more to do with the interviews and the people who are affected when liberties are tread on. So once again, hit the subscribe button, like, subscribe, and share. Thank you very much.